they travel in our airspace, they travel around our planet. We know that now, it's common knowledge, I think. Even the governments are saying that the extraterrestrials are here and there are craft flying around our planet.
Welcome to Galactic Good Vibes. I'm your host, Lesley Klein, and this is a Good Vibes TV original series where we explore mysteries of consciousness, extraterrestrial contact, and humanity's evolution. Today, I am honored to speak with Kevin Briggs, a lifelong experiencer and author who channels the Council of Eight. He's had profound experiences with star families, councils of extraterrestrial beings, and higher dimensional consciousness. As always, our goal is to raise vibration, expand understanding, and empower practical action, all without fear. Whether you're a seasoned experiencer or just curious, today's conversation is about growth, responsibility, and connecting with the larger threads of life in the universe. Please welcome Kevin Briggs.
I have to thank you because for inviting me on your show, because without people like yourself, I can't get my story out, and I've been asked to speak out about it. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it. I want your lifelong experiencer, and I understand your first experience happened when you were 8 years old. Can you tell us about what happened and how you first encountered the ETs?
Yes, I can. You're correct. I was 8 years old, and I was always sensitive as a young child to the frequencies that surround us. And I was taking a bath at home. There was a change in the frequency within the bathroom that I picked up on. And I looked to my right and two beings appeared. One male, one female, both very attractive, both with long blonde shoulder-length hair, with deep blue eyes, wearing a blue jumpsuit type garment. I was terrified, frightened to death, as you can imagine, being an 8-year-old boy. They were speaking telepathically to one another, which I could understand. I know who they are now. I've still got lifelong contact with them and regularly in contact with them. Their names are Ort and Dee. They are fifth dimensional beings. They are Arcturians. They are from Andromeda, and they are guides and teachers. And I remember the conversation to this day. Dee, that's the female, said to Ort, the male, "Is this the boy?" He said yes. She then questioned him again and said, "Are you sure this is a boy?" He said yes. She said, "But look at him, he's small, he's uneducated, and he's frightened by our presence." She was correct, I was terrified. He said, "Yes, this is a boy, I will guide him, I will teach him." There was some other conversation within that, and then they left. As I said, I was so scared I didn't dare get out of the bath. The water went cold. My mother came in to see who I was still in the bathroom. I told her about the two beings, and she said it was just my imagination. It wasn't. I am still in contact with them to this day, and I am now 72.
Now tell us more about, because he was basically your guide and teacher throughout your whole life up until today. What were some other key moments?
The next key moment, I was 9 years old, and I'd had some friends around. It was a Sunday. We'd been playing board games, and it got to about 5 o'clock, and it was time for them to go home for their tea. So we packed up the board games, and I showed them out the back door. When I turned around into the home, I could feel a frequency. So I went looking for this frequency. I went into the living room, and then I went upstairs into the 3 bedrooms, back down into the kitchen, and then into the living room where I felt the frequency was the strongest. I was drawn to the curtains and the window. I looked behind the curtains, and there was an orb there. It was about 4 to 6 inches across, slightly vibrating, orange, goldenly yellow in colour. There was no communication at that time, but I thought I'd brought it into the home. But I thought, oh, well, when I go to bed this evening, I'm sure it will disappear. It won't be there tomorrow. I woke up the following day and I could feel the frequency. I went downstairs and it was still there. To cut the long story short, it was there until Friday. I came home from school on Friday about 4 o'clock. I opened the back door and I knew that it had left. I went to the curtains, went and had a look behind the curtains, and it wasn't there. But from that day on, I was able to travel out of body at will. And I didn't know the full potential as a 9-year-old boy. I just used it for going to visit my grandparents. Usually at a weekend, I would leave my body, travel over to their home, enter through the roof, and sit in a master bedroom dressing room that they had. I would look down through the floor, which was opaque, and I could see my grandmother usually cooking in the kitchen on a Sunday, and my grandfather reading a newspaper or watching the TV. And it gave me great pleasure to see them there. And I often wondered what would they see if they came upstairs? I now know the answer to that. They would have seen my pure conscious energy orb, 4 to 6 inches across, slightly vibrating, orangey yellow in colour. And I still travel this way to this day, but I now know the full potential of it, and I can travel much further and utilise it for meeting with other beings. And I meet with Orton D travelling out of body now as well.
The orange orb that was behind the curtain, what was that exactly?
That was Ort's pure conscious energy orb, separated from his physical. They have the ability to do that. We as humans have the ability to do that, but we have to learn to do it. But I do suspect that when Ort was in my home from Sunday to Friday, that he activated something within my DNA. I have been told that our DNA are encoded with the light frequencies, and these frequencies can be activated by various things, mainly by frequencies. And I suspect that's what he did to accelerate my understanding of traveling outside of the physical realm, outside of the human body. I didn't, as I said earlier, I didn't realize the full potential of it then. I do now. It's extensive, where we can go, what we can do using our natural human abilities.
So a lot of times people see orbs, in the forest or around. So those are actual conscious beings that could be different from not just human spirits. It could be ET spirits or other energies, I guess, even fairies or other elementals.
Yes, without a doubt. I think that the key source of life within the universe is consciousness itself. And there are many beings that we don't see because we're not on the same frequency. But we talk about fairies, sometimes we talk about Bigfoot, Sasquatch and things like that. These are all beings at a different frequency. And once you understand that and you can access these frequencies, then you can see these beings. And that's what, as I say, I think my lifetime of education has been about consciousness itself and how it can be utilized as a conduit for communication, for travel, for healing, for education, for creation and co-creation. And once we understand that, then we evolve as a species and we can connect with our star families at their level of consciousness, which is what I do. And it's no different from speaking to your extended family here, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, your cousins. You use the frequencies that you share with them when you go and communicate with them. Well, it's the same with these star families, only we using higher frequencies of consciousness to make that connection. And I suspect the reason why they accelerated my learning and understanding of consciousness, so I can now speak on their behalf or go and speak with them directly if I want to. I can leave my body, I can go onto their craft and make that connection and ask them questions, and I receive answers.
Ort taught you over the years, and he taught you, you were astral traveling before he started, and I guess the experiences got more intense, or you were able to do more. He taught you also how to create your own ET craft. Tell us about that, and what's the purpose of having a craft as opposed to just astral traveling with your body?
Okay, that was much later on in life, only a few years ago, when I've been traveling on the astral plane all my life now. And sometimes I just do it for pleasure. I'll leave my body relax, open my mind, and go out into our solar system. It's nice to see the planets, the rings of the different planets, and it's just nice to see them. And it's enjoyable and relaxing. And but on many occasions, Orton D came alongside me in a craft, a conscious craft that they've created, and invited me on board. And I remember on one of these occasions, I was just traveling on the astral plane. A craft came alongside me, and I was invited on board. And there was two beings on board, as traveling as pure conscious energy orbs. That was Orton D. As I traveled through the skin of the craft, I realized it was conscious itself. I could feel the frequencies. And inside were these two orbs, 4 to 6 inches across, slightly vibrating. And I said to Orton D, I said, let me see if I understand this correctly. And what they tended to do all my life was give me experiences. They didn't sit me down in the classroom like they did with some experiences and taught. They gave me practical shared experiences with them. And on this occasion, I said, let me see if I understand what's happening here. I said, we have 3 different beings. I'm a human from the 3rd dimension. And then we've got you two, who are Arcturians from the 5th dimension. And the only difference between the dimensions are the frequencies of consciousness. And we're traveling in a conscious craft that you created. Is that correct? They said, yes, that's correct, Kevin. Then I said, I see you two as pure conscious energy orbs. How do you see me? And Art said, Kevin, we see you exactly the same. So we have those abilities, the same abilities that our star families do. We just don't use them. We don't utilize them. But I do, because I was taught them from childhood, really. And I continue to use them to this day. And now I find it's coming in useful, because there are many people waking up to their natural human abilities. And now we are connecting with our star families. The governments are talking about it. We've got different organizations talking about it. So I can use my skills and abilities that I've learned in a lifetime to make those connections and ask questions and learn more from them.
How did these experiences impact you emotionally, spiritually, or psychologically?
That's a very good question. Because they started when I was very young. In fact, it started really before being 8. When I was 3, my mother had engaged a photographer to take some photographs for the family album. The photographer arrived, and I was lifted up onto the dining room table. And from that elevated position, I looked around the room and realized that my conscious energy was in a physical body again. So that was the first recollection. Then obviously I've mentioned the Orton D materializing in the bathroom at 8. And then the orb in my home behind the curtain when I was 9. And then my next encounter, I would be 14. I had a paper out. And every time I left the home, I would look up, and there would be a craft above the home. And then I'd cycle down to the paper store to get my papers, and a second UFO would appear. And they would follow me around the paper round until I'd finished. And then one would go straight back up into space, and the other one would go back in the direction it had come from. And while they were following me, I was always aware of a frequency behind the wall, behind the hedge. And on one occasion, I said to them, I know you're there, can you show yourself? And 2 small grey beings stepped out. I wasn't frightened. I asked them what they wanted, and they said there was a group of people that wanted to meet with me. Would I go with them? I said, well, I've got my paper round to finish, and then I've got to go to school. Well, they said, you've nearly finished your paper round, so you can finish that, and then we can have you back in time for school. So I agreed to go with them. And I was transported to what I believe was a mothership, a mothercraft. As we pulled into the hangar, it was the size of 2 football stadiums. And within that hangar were all the different craft that we see flying around our planet, around our atmosphere. And I was led down into an amphitheater. And in that amphitheater, there were 8 beings at the front on the stage. And the amphitheater was full of all these different beings. And initially I thought he was just there as a human specimen to be paraded in front of these people. I went down to the front and I was introduced to all 8. There was Ort and Dee, the 2 that I'd met in the bathroom. There was Anna, she was a bluebird type being. Zark, he's a mathematician and engineer. He designs propulsion systems. He's a small grey. And then Ra in the centre, the leader of the group, a 9th dimensional being, and Anunnaki. And then Tag, he told me he was a tall grey. He said he was responsible for the security, not only of this Council of 8, but for the quadrant of this galaxy. And then Chica, I was a bit perturbed by Chica. He was a mantis being. And although they were sat down, I could see he was well over 6 feet tall, very tall indeed. Just like the mantis beings we've got here, only full size as it were. And then the last one was Orla. I think she told me she was an astrobiologist and she was a tall white. She had translucent hair, and I think that was it for the 8. And then obviously I was taken back, left near my home, and I got back to school in time for the beginning of the school that day. But in relation to how it has affected me, I just feel that it wasn't until I got to about 17 or 18, I thought, nobody talks about these other beings. Nobody talks about traveling out of the body. And I would use it for simple things like, say, on a Sunday. I remember this one occasion with my friend Gary. And I thought, I'll go around and see if he wants to go for a pint. And in England, the pubs at that time opened at 12 o'clock on a Sunday. So I left my body, I flew over to his house to see if he was in before I walked the 10 minutes round there. And he's laid on the sofa watching football, soccer. So I got dressed and I walked round to his house. I went round to his house, I knocked on the door, and his mother answered the door. And I said, is Gary at home? And she said, no. And I thought, I've just seen him. And then she followed it up by saying, no, he's just left. He's been laid on the sofa all morning watching soccer, but he's gone round to Steve's to see if he wants to go up for a pint. So I walked round to Steve I went up for a pint. But then other simple things, when I went to work on the morning, I would come out of my apartment and I would walk to the bus stop, but very often there was a line of people, really huge line, and I had a choice of 2 bus stops to go to. So what I would do, I would come out of my apartment, leave my body, nip up to the first bus stop, and then go down to the second bus stop and see which had the shortest line, and then walk to that particular bus stop. So just simple things, but I thought it was normal. I thought everybody did that, and it wasn't until nobody started talking about it that I asked family and friends, but I asked in a third party. I said, I have a friend of mine who says he travels out of his body all the time and he can travel anywhere he wants to go. Do you know anybody like that? And the answer came back, no, he must be delusional or he's imagining it. Well, clearly I'm not, because I still travel out of body to this day, and I've been taught so much by the out of body with practical experiences, yes.
It was 14 when you met the Council of 8? After
Yes.
the paper round? So you were 14, but it wasn't till you didn't really start communicating with them till later?
But yes, when I was 17 or 18, because I'd asked all my friends and family about traveling out of body, and nobody knew anything about it. So one evening I went to bed, I relaxed, I opened my mind, as I say, I held my hand out and I said to Ort, I know there's much more to this. Can you come and show me? He came, he took hold of my hand. I left my body. I looked down, I could see myself fast asleep. And we went out through the roof. We didn't go very far. We just went around the subdivision, the area where I lived. And then we came back in through the window. I could see my body fast asleep. And I went back into my body. And then I woke up the following morning thinking, wow, that was cool. I wasn't certain whether I was dreaming or sleepwalking or what was happening. So I thought the second night I would try the same routine. So I relaxed, I opened my mind, I held my hand out, and I asked Ort to come and show me more. He came, he took hold of my hand. I left my body, I looked down, I could see it fast asleep. We went out through the window, and this time we went down to Leeds city centre, where I worked at the time, and I recognised the buildings, the university, the hospital, the town hall, and Leeds had a vibrant nightlife at that time. there were people milling about the streets and things. So, and then we came back to my apartment, into the window, and I saw my body asleep, and then went back into my body. I woke up the following morning, still not certain what was happening, bearing in mind I'm used to traveling on my own out of body, but not with someone else. So I thought I would ask again for the third night running. But I was still perturbed about going out through the window because I was 3 stories up and it was concrete pavement below, and that gave me some concern. So I did the same routine, and Ort came, he took hold of my hand. I left my body, I looked down, I could see it fast asleep. And he said, "Are you ready?" I said, "Yes, but can we go out through the roof this evening? I'm not happy going out through that window because I'm not certain whether I'm sleepwalking or dreaming or what's happening really." So he says, "Yes, no problem." So we went out through the roof. And then all subsequent journeys were out through the roof. So that was my initiation, shall we say, to traveling with Ort out of body at 17, 18 I was.
Again, what's the purpose of traveling just in your body versus in a craft and creating a craft?
That's a very good question, that is. You don't really need a craft. You can go anywhere out of body. It was really another lesson, another example. And on this occasion, when I'd been traveling on the astral plane, Ort and Dee came alongside in a conscious craft. And Ort said to me, I was invited on board, and he said to me, "Kevin, why don't you travel further?" And I said, "Well, it's all right for you. You've got Dee to travel with. You've got a conscious craft you can travel in. You can go anywhere you want to go." He said to me, "Well, Kevin, why don't you create your own conscious craft?" And I said, "Well, how would I do that?" He said, "Using thought and consciousness." So I said, "Okay, I'll try." So I left, and I went back to my body. And the following morning, I thought, right, this evening, I'm going to try that. I'm going to see if I can think about creating a conscious craft. So I went to bed that evening. I relaxed. I opened my mind, and I created this craft. It was circular. It had a large window. It had a seat, and I set off in this conscious craft. I could feel it was conscious. It was surrounding me. I'm traveling out of body in a conscious craft as a conscious energy orb that I've created. And I see all these, what I thought were stars, whizzing past at super speed. Then I realized they weren't stars. They were galaxies whizzing past me. At that point, I got a little bit apprehensive and decided to terminate the experiment. And I went back to my body and I woke up. And I thought, wow, that was good. But I really need to know where I'm going. I felt as if I could have got lost. I might not have been able to get back. So the following day, I looked at some star charts for some different areas. And I thought, well, I need a navigation system so I know where I'm going. So I designed a thought interface navigation system. So where I think I go. I looked at the star charts, as I said, and I decided I was going to go to Andromeda. And the reason why I chose that was because that's where Ort and Dee came from. So the following night, I was creating another conscious energy craft. Only this time, I made a larger window. I wanted a bigger window, and I wanted a larger seat. I don't know why I needed a larger seat as traveling as a pure conscious energy orb, but that's what I designed. And I incorporated a thought interface navigation system. So where I thought was where I went. And I thought I wanted to go to Andromeda. I'd already planned to go to Andromeda to see if I could bump into Ort and Dee. And when I set off, I created the craft successfully. And I got to this planet and I circled the planet, and there was a big cloud base there. I didn't go down through the cloud base, but I remember thinking at the time, if I went down through that cloud base now and this planet is habited, then would they see a UFO? Would they consider me an extraterrestrial? I suspect they would. Is that what happens here when Ort and Dee travel here from Andromeda? Or the other extraterrestrials that are here, they travel here. But they travel down, they travel in our airspace, they travel around our planet. We know that now, it's common knowledge, I think. Even the governments are saying that the extraterrestrials are here and there are craft flying around our planet. So I then came back and I went back into my body And I realized that I was able to do that. And I've done it several times now. But we don't need a craft to go and travel. I can travel anywhere I want to travel, just as a pure conscious energy orb. And I can go where I want to do. I think me creating the craft was another practical lesson in using thought and consciousness for the creation side of reality, the creation side of who we are, really, and expanding our own understanding of consciousness itself, and that it is non-local. It has a duality, it has entanglement within all matter, within the universe itself. And I think that's the key. That was the lesson that they were teaching me in relation to the creation side of consciousness.